John, a favorite of ours joins the show this week. He was a favorite of ours in the Bronx. He's now going to be a favorite of ours in Queens. That's the Mets manager, Carlos Mendoza.
Yeah, absolutely. Great get by you, Joel, on his off day. So kudos to Carlos for coming on. He's a terrific, terrific guy. And obviously, he's done a very nice job so far in spring training. And we will soon find out what kind of a manager that he will be.
Yeah, and we'll ask him about being a first-time manager, I'm sure. We'll ask him about Alonso in his walk year, about all the young players that the organization's so excited about. You and I will talk about Zack Wheeler's new extension, the lingering free agencies of Montgomery and Snell. We'll play hit and error at the end if you stick with us on the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman. John, I think you're back home right now. Are you back home?
I'm home, yes.
You're home. I'm in beautiful Tradition, Florida. So like those of people who are watching us on YouTube, if I look like the villain Two-Face from like the Batman series, you'll know the lighting isn't great in this room. But John and I, obviously, we're gamers, John. We're going to do a podcast here. Before we came, just not long before we began this show, it broke. The Phillies are in agreement with Zack Wheeler, 3 years, $126 million extension that will begin next year. John, you know, the first thing I thought about with it, I wrote a little bit about it for our Plus column, which will come out tomorrow, is if I would have told you in 2017, after Zack Wheeler had missed the 15-16 season and had a 5-something ERA in 17, that the guy who was going to have the most substantial career out of Harvey, Syndergaard, Matz, and DeGrom is Zack Wheeler. And yet he's turned into the rarity in the sport. There's 3 things an ace can be. You could pitch like an ace when you're on the mound. You could do it as a workhorse, and then you could do it in the postseason. And he's like with Cole, the rare guy who can do all 3 things. What an amazing metamorphosis from the guy we knew with the Mets, who kind of got the durability late. He pitched a lot in 17 and 18, but he's just taken just another step in durability and clearly in pitching excellence, regular and postseason.
Yeah, really amazing. No one could have foreseen this. He's arguably the best pitcher in the National League. I'll say Cole's the best in the American League and best in baseball, but case could be made for Zack Wheeler to be the best. There's only a handful of pitchers who are 8-inning pitchers in baseball anymore. I would put Cole in there, Logan Webb. I would put Nola, the teammate of Wheeler, in there. And Wheeler, I was stunned when Wheeler got 5 years for $118 million. He was actually offered more than that by the White Sox, like $120 to $125 million. But, you know, at that point, that's been an amazing bargain. It was a great signing. And here, not a bargain, but understandable that he got the biggest salary ever in an extension, $42 million a year, $126 million, no opt-outs. I think obviously he's been with the team. He loves the team. Bryce Harper set that standard of no opt-outs. He might be a little regretful of that on a 13-year deal, but on a 3-year deal makes sense. And look, the Phillies are going to be a team to be reckoned with in the foreseeable future. Their rotation is arguably the best in the division.
Yeah, and look, we're going to end up talking about the remaining free agents and what people will do. We do know in Philadelphia that there's an owner who's all set to try to win and take care of his own, right? What Nola and Wheeler have done together as workhorses, regular and postseason, he rewarded both of them. I think probably when the offseason began, people would have said 170-something million for Nola is too much, 7 years. You know, that Wheeler would have the 3rd largest per annum pitching contract in history is a lot. But John Middleton and Dave Dombrowski have shown they are going to try to win, and when they have guys who are good players, they're going to take care of them.
Yeah, as I mentioned, I think Middleton is arguably the best owner in baseball right now. I mean, he is the guy who was clearly wanting to win. You know, we've lost, unfortunately, some of those type owners in recent years. Certainly Seidler, unfortunately, with his untimely death several months ago, the Padres had been all in. Now they are not all in. The Nats, Ted Lerner, had been all in. Now they are rebuilding. Detroit, I think they're rebuilding pretty well, but they're rebuilding now. Mike Ilitch had been all in. His son, not quite to that extent, might be more of a hockey guy. Right now, we got a lot of teams right now that are really not spending. I think 1/3 of the team's payroll is going down. 1/3 is about stagnant, up 10 million or less. And really, if you're out there trying to win, you're really standing out in a sense right now. John Middleton obviously is doing that.
Yeah, John, that's a good transition to look. I don't want it to be Groundhog's Day. We're going to end up talking Snell, Montgomery again. Since we last talked, Matt Chapman signed with the Giants, and what stands out to me, John, is Scott Boras is the agent for those two star pitchers as he was for Chapman and Bellinger. And one of the things is, if you look at Scott's history, is he does get his guys signed in free agency to those teams that, pick your word, act boldly, act irrationally. When the Rangers are ready to win, he gets Simeon and Seager there. When the Phillies are ready to win, he gets Harper there. You want to go back to Tom Hicks with the Rangers for A-Rod. And I think you framed it well. That is not the market. The one organization that was willing to spend a lot this offseason, the Dodgers, were willing to do it for two specific players, but not the field. We don't have really that bold, irrational actor out there. And I think Scott, when he's dealing with these kind of players, is used to being able to look and say, hey, you're trying to win. I got these players. And that's why we're seeing this problem right now.
Right. I mean, Texas, you can understand it to a degree. Obviously, they've lost Montgomery. They lost Garver, their DH. And really, there are guys out there right now, including Montgomery, who could replace himself. You've got J.D. Martinez. I think there's a little bit of a less incentive once you've won the World Series, as Texas did win. And there are several other teams. I look at the Angels. They lost their best hitter and best pitcher in Ohtani. And, they've just been kind of thinking about whether they're going to do something. And the Red Sox have kind of dipped their toe in and finished second or third with a lot of different things and really haven't done anything. A team that's finished last 3 out of the last 4 years. It's hard to believe that these are the Red Sox. I mean, maybe they're concentrating on the Penguins and golf and all of their other entities. I'm not sure what's going on up there in Boston, but times certainly have changed. And you're right, the Dodgers, of the $2.1 billion spent so far, they've spent half of that money. Basically half of that money has been spent by that one team. And most of that was on, obviously, Ohtani. And then the bulk of the rest of that was on Yamamoto. So it's been an unusual offseason. And right now, the remaining free agents who are really good players. I mean, Snell is really good. I mean, you hear whispers about different things about him, but let's face it, he was the best pitcher in baseball from May on. And a 1.2 ERA from May 25th on. It's a little bit shocking that he is not very popular compared to what we thought he would be. I'm sure he's getting interest, I'm sure, but it's not what you'd expect for the NL and now two-time Cy Young winner, one time in the NL, one time in the AL.
Yeah. So, John, I just do wonder with like Snell and Montgomery. We could agree to agree. You and I covered Monty quite a lot. I would say he was a very good teammate. He was a gamer, loved to take the ball. Did the Yankees give him the ball enough, stick with him enough? I'm not sure. He certainly has shown when you do that, what will happen. But at some point here, even if you and I say agree to agree, hey, they deserve X. The industry is now speaking. We're up to March 4th as we're doing this show.
Right.
And at some point, if you have to sell your house, you could think it's worth $1 million. But if everyone's offering $750,000, if you really have to sell the house, since I assume that Montgomery and Snell won't become like Uber drivers anytime soon, they're going to play Major League Baseball this year. At some point, do they just have to say, I got to sell the house? What's the best offer? And get into camp? Because at this point, I know that I've talked to Scott. I know you've talked to Scott. They're at his places in Florida. They're at his places in LA. But they can't throw to the intensity that they probably want to and need to get ready for the season. They can't risk getting hurt, right? And then you wouldn't pass a physical. Then you're really messed up in this situation. So at some point, like we saw it, Chapman took a 3-year contract. I'm sure that's not what he wanted. Bellinger took a 3-year contract. They both got multiple opt-outs. Doesn't at some point you have to sell the house?
Well, both guys do seem very patient. I will say that Kyle Loesch, a guy who was also very patient, didn't sign until March 25th with the Milwaukee Brewers. I think that was a $33 million deal at different times. Obviously, probably not the pitcher that Snell is, but a very good pitcher, a little bit older at that time, and did wait till March 25th and he was ready in the first rotation. I believe he pitched game 4. So if you're a certain guy who works out a certain way, you could be ready a lot sooner than teams think. But, obviously we're now in March, so it's a bit unusual to see pitchers. JD Martinez will be fine. He can sign whenever and hit whenever, and he'll be all right. And, his situation, he turned down, I believe it was 15 million or even more with Giants, just did not want to be in that park, basically, and is waiting for a team with a more conducive park and maybe a better team. I'm not sure if that was part of the equation, but I've been talking about this for weeks, and I've been suggesting it could be a while, but it's been a while at this point.
Yeah, John, I maybe as a way to wrap this up, I keep wondering with Montgomery and Snell in particular, if we had a bet on which guy you would look back on 5 years from now and be happy you signed, do you think you'd be more happy that you had signed Jordan Montgomery or Blake Snell to a 5-year?
But I will say it this way: if you want to win the World Series this year, next year, or the year after, I'll go with Snell. But if you're looking for 7 years in Montgomery, and I think that's why Montgomery look first. We're going full circle unless we started with Wheeler. I think he was looking at that Nola deal, and he looked at it, and he's been better than Nola 2 out of the last 3 years. But I get it with Nola. Nola's an 8-inning pitcher. Nola has a cachet in Philadelphia. He's certainly more well-known and has more accomplished in MLB than Montgomery. So I can see that other side of the coin for him. So I get why he saw Nola 172, and he's thinking, you know what? I've actually been better than Nola without saying it out loud the last 2 out of the last 3 years. So I get it. I think he's still sticking out for a long deal. We'll see if he gets 7 years, but I could still see somebody signing him to a long deal. Snell, obviously he's 30 years old at this point, and I think he has told the Yankees he was willing to do a short-term deal. Obviously, that's really not working for the Yankees at this moment, but I'm assuming he's willing to do it for somebody else, and that may be the result. And, I know there's a lot of criticism about these deals, but let's face it, a lot of these guys who had some kind of, let's say, hickey, whatever you want to call it, some kind of flaw, like Adrian Beltre, when he was in Seattle, didn't put up big numbers, took a 1-year deal with Boston, and it worked out fabulously for him. These are better deals than a 1-year deal, whether it's in Boston or anywhere else. If you get a 3-year deal with 2 opt-outs, you get 3 more chances to prove yourself. And certainly in Bellinger's case, he's going to be a free agent 3 times in his 20s, which we haven't seen before. So I get it so far, but it's going to be interesting to see what they come up with on Snell, because I'm surprised at how many teams have really shied away from Blake Snell. I don't get these comments that you hear out there that he's not such a hard worker. I mean, the guy had a 1.2 ERA from May on. He's obviously working hard enough, isn't he? How much harder does he need to work?
Yeah. John, maybe the industry is speaking and we should listen. Bill Parcells had that saying, when a player shows you who he is, believe it. It's like, maybe, unless you think that we're dealing with the big C collusion, maybe we need to say that the industry has real questions about him. And one of the things I just thought is, as a way to wrap this up, I'll just say it out loud, is it possible, like you and I will agree, the Yankees make a ton of money. I think you mentioned they take in about $800 million a year. But they're not, they're going to have a limit on their payroll. Do they have to worry that if they sign Snell and you already have Cole and Judge and Stanton, that it would be tough to sign Soto long term?
I mean, it depends how you look at it. I mean, obviously, if they do this, they're going to be paying that big tax, and then they'll be paying an even bigger tax if they sign.
And have we sensed that how Steinbrenner wants to like he's up over 300? Right. I just feel like I just wonder if that's a big part of this discussion, because we're seeing early on that Soto, like all the questions about Snell in New York, there were 0 about Soto in New York, and he's showing that right away in spring training, how much he kind of like loves the spotlight.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, it's a big debate with the Yankees, and at this point, it doesn't look like they're going for it, but the debate is, you get Snell and you have the best 1-2 combination in baseball, Cole and Snell starting it out. You may even be the World Series favorite. Now, teams are probably looking at that postseason now as kind of a crapshoot, as we're getting, teams in there in the World Series. But Arizona won 84. Texas was a wild card. Maybe the going for it isn't quite the going for it that it used to be. And maybe that is a factor in the market as well. But that's the debate. You want the World Series favorite versus, on the other hand, you'd be paying, a tax that you really don't want to pay. And I get it. I mean, even rich people don't like paying tax. Right now, their tax is going to be 11 million. They signed Snell, it'd be 40 million plus. So I still think they'd be making a profit, though. It's not like the Mets last year where they lost $200 million plus, right? The Yankees would still be making money if they did that, but it is difficult, and I understand it, and I'm not going to get on them too much. They did say they were all in, though, or what was the hell-bent, right? Hell-bent on winning. Yeah. Obviously that was
a $300 million payroll on Juan Soto is at least hell-bent.
Hell-bent to me means you're all in. To me, again, that's the manager talking. He's got good with words. He's hell-bent on winning with what he's got, but if the team is hell-bent, maybe you go out and sign Snell.
You mentioned the manager, Aaron Boone. His bench coach the past 4 years was Carlos Mendoza. You like that transition, John? Was Carlos Mendoza. He's now the manager of the Mets, and today he'll join the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman. John and I are so appreciative that Carlos Mendoza, on the rare day off in spring training, you're going to make all of us look bad. Husband, father, you drove across the state to be with your family from Port St. Lucie. You're joining us from Tampa. Carlos Mendoza, first-year manager of the Mets. John and I have obviously known you a long time. 2009, you joined the Yankees. You were the bench coach the past 4 years. And as I mentioned, first year as Mets manager. And I'm going to ask a little bit of an offbeat question off of, I think it was yesterday's game, right? There was an interference call early in the game, I think involving Starling Marte. You came out. You were the bench coach for Aaron Boone. We know what it looks like when Aaron Boone gets angry and is about to argue. I'm going to have you at 2.5 ejections this year on FanDuel. What is it going to look like when you argue? Will it look anything like the guy you were the bench coach for? How's that going to play out?
First of all, thanks for having me on the show, Joel and John. Big fan of the show. I don't know. That's a good question. One thing I did a lot, I came out of the dugout to try to get Booney from arguing. But he was pretty good when, as we saw it over the years. He comes up with some, with things that only Booney can do it, Not trying to beat his record. I'm not trying to, my job is to stay in the game just like his job is, but we'll see. We'll see how he plays out.
Yeah, actually, I think Boone might have helped you get the job. He was ejected so often that you proved yourself that you could manage.
It's funny you say that, John, because last year he went through a stretch where he got thrown out probably, 3 times a week. And somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, you're the 31st manager in the big leagues." I was getting a lot of reps.
You were. So I'll just go, instead of off the board like Joel went, how's camp going? What do you think? Is this a playoff caliber team? David Stearns thought so when you started camp. Obviously, you've had a big loss since then.
Yeah, camp's going well. I've been pretty pleased with how everything is going and is running. Being able to go to work with so many great people, so many great baseball minds, a lot of experience, starting with the coaching staff and how much they prepare each and every day. And then, the group of players that I get as well, not only the established players, but the youngsters, it's been great. The first 3 weeks, I'm very pleased with how things are going. And, I do feel like we are a playoff team. David said it. I've been saying it all along. I know, projections and all that might say something different, but we do believe that we have a really good team.
Carlos, if I could deal with one more big picture issue with you being a manager here. You've been in baseball a long time. You're a minor league player with the Yankees since 2009. You were around the team with Girardi, with Boone, so very good major league managers. what's something you could only learn managing that, say, you've learned over this period of time that you couldn't know standing next to the guy managing?
Yeah, well, that's a good one because, you don't know until you go through it, and there's going to be a lot of different things that I'm going to experience for the first time, especially when you're making that final call, when you're making the shot, the last call. But like I said, being able to surround myself with great baseball minds, having Gibby right next to me, as a pitching coach who's, done it for a long time. And then, guys like Glenn Sherlock and Sarby, those guys are going to help me a lot. I just got to go through it. I don't think yeah, you're prepared and you feel like you're ready, but I'm pretty sure there's going to be times where a lot of things are going to be new for me. But like I said, I'm going to rely a lot on my coaches. And, I do feel, obviously, I know I'm ready, but it's hard for me to pinpoint one specific area. But I feel pretty good and, ready to go.
I think your upbeat attitude is right for this team at this moment. Obviously, had a very disappointing season last year. It's great to be upbeat, but injecting a little reality in the situation. Senga, that's a big loss. The team is suggesting it's going to be a month at the minimum. To me, that sounds light, considering it's a capsule, a shoulder. How big a loss is this, and can he really be back in May?
Yeah, look, not a secret. It is a big loss, but we do feel like we're gonna get him in, in time for him to pitch a lot of games for us and to give us a lot of innings. I don't think Kodai is too concerned about it, and that's a good sign. Even when he first reported that he wasn't bouncing back the way he wanted to, but we do feel comfortable, and we are expecting to see Senga taking the ball a lot this year and contribute and being a huge part of our rotation.
Carlos, one of the ways you compensate for not having Senga and then being even better when and if Senga comes back in full is if Luis Severino is a healthy, quality starting pitcher. You have had a front row seat when he was as good a pitcher as there was pretty much in baseball in 17-18. He hasn't been that guy over the last 4 or 5 years. Health mainly, and then last year was just all went off the rails. He's made one start. It looked pretty good from the press box. Why should Met fans be encouraged that you're getting Luis Severino back?
Well, look, we've seen these guys, like you said, being the real deal when he's healthy. And he's been through a lot the past couple of years. He's dealt with so much injuries. And last year, was tough. He got hit on the face pretty much and got knocked down. But he's such a competitor. He went through an off season where he kept throwing. He did a lot of things differently in preparation for spring training and for the regular season. What we're seeing early on is really encouraging. The way he's bouncing back after each mound session, whether it's a bullpen, a live EP. We saw him the other day for the first time in a game. And he's doing a lot of work behind the scenes, whether it's extra conditioning, taking care of itself. Not that he didn't in the past, but now with more experience and the fact that he's been through a lot with injuries, I think he's got a better understanding of his body and just the flexibility, being honest with us, with the pitching coaches, with the trainers, and making sure that if he needs an extra day, if he needs an extra couple of days from throwing and things like that, we are encouraging to speak up, especially this early in camp. He's going to be, we're counting on him. We're going to need him, obviously, especially now that Kodai is down. But I want Sevi to be, the guy that we know he's capable of being, the guy that's going to take the baseball. He's going to compete. He's going to give you quality innings. And I'm very excited where Sevi is at right now.
When the offseason started, you had 2 surefire starting pitchers, Senga and Quintana. Obviously, you lost one of them. And I liked a lot of what David and the team did bringing guys in. But right now, the rotation looks like still the big question, despite all of the acquisitions. 1 to 5 right now, in order. What's your rotation?
We're still working through it, no, we still, in the early weeks stages of spring training. The biggest thing is we got to keep these guys healthy. As far as 1 through 5, we do feel comfortable, with some, with all of those guys, whether it's Quintana, whether it's Severino or Adrian Hauser. Obviously, we got competition for that, 5th spot, but McGill came into camp in really, really good shape. Way ahead of schedule. He was already throwing live VPs and 2-ups, and Budo is another guy that's in competition. Lucchesi, we saw what he did at the end of last year. So we do feel we've been talking about our depth all offseason, and yeah, we've been tested here in the early weeks of camp. But 1 through 5, I feel pretty good with these guys taking the ball and giving us quality innings.
Carlos, why don't I take the handoff from there? Because when you guys have talked about your depth, the early season depth is guys like McGill and Budo and Lucchesi, and you hope at some point David Peterson, who's had about 60 major league starts, comes back from his hip thing. The other group is a group of prospects who are coming. I wonder if you could speak to them, specifically the guy who kind of gets mentioned the most when I ask is Christian Scott. His name keeps coming up over and over as potentially the best of the group. What do you think you have in him, Vassell, Hamill, etc.?
It's an exciting group. I was able to watch him pitch, a couple of days for the first time in the big league at the big league level. But watching them on live VP, and with the way they went about their business off the field, and the conversations they were having with some of our established players, whether it was relievers, guys like Otto, Brooks Raley, or Quintana, the conversations that they were having, the interactions, it was pretty impressive with the way they carry themselves. We see the stuff, we see when you're watching on the mound, the repertoire and the way they go about their business and the way they compete. But off the field, like in that locker room, the interactions, the relationships, the way they were, some of the questions that they were asking, whether it was preparation, reports, things like that. I was really, really impressed with this group that is going to be knocking out the door here. They're going to go down, obviously, and continue their development. But I am really, really excited with this group of arms that we got in the minor leagues.
Can I just, though, Scott in particular, just because he's come up so much in my week with you guys, what are you seeing with him? Yeah,
well, we saw the other day heavy fastball, the way he uses his pitches, the way he attacks the strike zone, the way he competes, and he's smart. He's a smart kid. And he wants to continue to get better. He's not afraid to ask questions, and that's important. He knows who he is. He understands who he is on the mound and some of the things that he needs to work on. But at the same time, he understands his strength, and that's for being a young pitcher, close to the big leagues. And when you see some of the things that he's doing, is pretty impressive. So. Just like Vassell, Hamill, those guys, a lot of people are mentioning Scott, but we do feel really good about the other guys as well.
The big question for the Mets beyond, of course, the team, whether it is actually going to be a playoff team, is Pete Alonso. And so, we'll see. He's got a year to go. This is his final year at Platform. A year before, he is a free agent. So that's certainly a storyline for the season. How do you think Pete's going to handle this? And is there anything particular you're going to have to monitor or stay in touch with Pete to make sure that, we're all on the same page and not worrying about the contract?
Look, he's going to handle it fine. This is a guy that came up as a Met, and he's been on the spotlight every year of his career, and he's performed. This is a guy that knows that he gets it. He knows what it takes to play in New York. He's performed. He's been one of the best players in the league. I'm excited to have him on our team. My job is to make sure Pete is in a really good position to go out there and have success and being himself. Being around him for the past couple of weeks, I've been really, really impressed with the way this guy prepares, how much he cares about not only the preparation, but winning. when we get on some of those meetings and some of those conversations, it's all about winning for Pete. And, when you got guys like that leading the way, along with guys like Lindor, Nemo, from the position player side of things, it's important. It's important because not only they are very vocal, but with the way they go about their business and how they prepare, it's been really, really impressive. So Pete will be fine. I'm expecting big things out of Pete. And, he's a big part of our team, obviously, not a secret.
Carlos, you certainly know what the great homegrown slugger in his walk year can do. You were, again, great seat for Aaron Judge hitting 62 homers in his walk year. I'm sure you're hoping for the same with Alonso. You watched last year. There were freak injuries for Judge and Rizzo. You take those away. The Yankees, from that terrible 82 and 80 year, maybe they actually make the playoffs if Judge and Rizzo, just freak injuries, don't get there. I wonder if we'd be saying something somewhat similar if Marte and Diaz had played healthy last year, because they're so important as a catalyst to the offense and the end game, kind of setting up your bullpen. They're such important guys coming back from a missed year and a bad year. Tell us where they are and what they mean.
They mean a lot. And right now, they are feeling really, really good. Diaz, taking the ball, going through his final steps of his rehab process, scheduled to throw in a minor league game tomorrow, doing PFP drills. But that was a big loss for this team last year. Like you said, it's a different way of managing the game when, you got that guy in the ninth inning ready to go when you have the lead. It's a different way how you're going to approach and how you're going to manage your bullpen. And for all of us, it's important to have a guy like that in the ninth. And he's healthy, he's feeling great. And so is Marte. This is a guy that we've seen it in the past. This is, in so many ways, a guy that can impact a game, whether it's by running the bases, by offensively, defensively. We saw the other day he made a throw from right field all the way to third base. He was pretty impressive. And, we had the opportunity to go to Winnable and watch him play. And we were very pleased with how he was moving. This guy is healthy. And, same thing here in the early stages of spring training with the way he's preparing, the way he's running around, and the fact that he's playing games this early tells you that he's feeling pretty good. Because in the past, he's a guy that, didn't play till probably like the second week of March. But now, understanding where he's at, it was good for him to start getting those game reps. It's important for our team to have those two. And look, this time of the year, a lot of teams are saying we need to stay healthy. And it's not a secret for us. We have to stay healthy in order for us to be the team that we know we're capable of being. So we're counting on those two, and I'm excited to have them.
I was very impressed by Jet Williams in my initial interview. A very poised, confident young man. I mean, I would have liked to talk to Luis Angel Acuna. My fault. I don't speak Spanish, but I've heard good things about him. Gilbert, what are your initial impressions of the top position prospects in camp?
Exciting group. We know about the tools and some of the things that can do on the field. But you mentioned Jet. This is a 20-year-old kid, and he was. The way he carried himself in that locker room is like, I belong here. That was basically, some of the things that you saw out of him. I think this was a really good experience for him to watch the established player go about their business and how they prepare and the conversations in general, the way they as simple as when you're taking a ground ball with, the intensity, the attention to detail and things like that for a 20-year-old, it was impressive. Obviously we know how well he controlled the strike zone, the bat to ball skills, the speed, but the feel for the game. Jet is an exciting player. Drew, same way. This is a guy that, is going to run through walls. He plays as hard as anybody. There's a lot of tools there. There's impact. There's knowledge of the strike zone. Somebody that can play in the outfield, really good arm. And Acuna, this is another kid that the tools are there. He was, having him right next to Lindor in that locker room was impactful for him, and with some of the conversations that they were having in Spanish, obviously. So yeah, it was good. We are really, really excited about those three, and they are a big part of our future here.
John mentioned some young players who are part of your future, Carlos. Two younger players who are kind of part of your present make up your third base situation in Beatty and Vientos. And my overall question is, I really like what David Stearns attempted to do this season, which was defense in depth, right? More depth, better defense, help the pitching staff, etc. Can you be a good defensive team if you're not good at third base defensively? And can you be good at third base defensively with that duo?
Yeah, we feel really good about having them playing third base. I don't think we are not a good defensive team if they're playing. I think we are a really good defensive team by having Beatty or Vientos there. I mean, what I'm seeing so far, and again, this is more like backfield work, occasional reps during games, but talking to them, watching them go about their doing drills and things like that, I do feel good about them. I think it's giving them the opportunity, making them feel like they're big league players, and they're going to get an opportunity. We've been saying all off season, we're going to have Vientos, we need Beatty, Alvarez on his second year. People forget about Alvarez. This is another young kid that came up last year, but defense was a priority for David, for myself, for all of us. And we do feel good about what Beatty and Vientos can do at third base.
Pete hit 40 home runs plus again last year. He does it every year. He stays healthy. He's a great slugger. But one issue for the team has been they really haven't had an established number 5 hitter batting behind Pete. One is, would you like to see JD Martinez walk through that door? And if not, you have someone in mind who is that 5 hitter? I mean, you've got candidates, and maybe Alvarez can be that guy. I don't know. Really, it's your decision, though. That's just my thought.
Those are some of the conversations that we're having as with the coaching staff and some of how we're going to play around with our lineup, and that always comes up, like who's going to hit behind Pete. So it's still early. We got to get to the next 3 weeks and start playing around with some batting orders and stuff like that. There's got to be conversations that I need to have with some of the players. And to make sure that we're putting them in a right position. I do feel good with what Alvarez can do, whether it's an Alvarez, whether it's a Vientos, and McNeil, even Lindor. So we'll see how everything plays out here through camp. But like I said, Pete's going to be a big part of our team. You said it. This is a guy that hits 40 plus pretty much every year, drives in 100 plus every year, and I'm looking forward to watch Pete play this 2024.
You said you're having conversations about who's going to protect Pete. Is JD Martinez, who's still out there, part of those conversations, or are you just?
Well, those are some of the conversations that probably Dave is having with his people. Look, every team is always looking for ways to improve their team, and I'm pretty sure David's looking at it the same way, whether it's JD Martinez or whatever the case might be. That's up to David. My job obviously is to manage the 26 guys that are going to be on the roster, and I do feel good about what we have in camp.
That was such a veteran answer, Carlos. I like how you did that. It was like you've been doing this for 20 years. You really learned well from Girardi and Boone.
Good.
Let me, to follow and to wrap up, you are a first-year manager, but you've been in the game a long time. What is your comfort level if you feel there is need, whether it's a starting pitcher, an extra bat right now, to be able to go to David or Steve Cohen and say, hey, guys, we want to make the playoffs. I think we're lacking. As a first-year manager, can you do that? And in that way, can you tell us how the relationship is going so far with a new GM and a new owner?
Yeah, and I think that those conversations are already happening, a month or so ago, like having the ability to go to the president of baseball operation anytime you want and voice your opinion, it's important. And to be able to partner with David and Steve and Alex, it's been great. The relationship, people skills, David is always, interacting not only with myself, but with the coaches and the front office staff. And I think that's important, that for me, to have that ability to go up to him or for him to come up to me and say, what are you seeing? How are you feeling? What are some of the things that you feel like we need to improve on? There's, each and every day we're having those conversations. And even when Stevie's around or a phone call, those conversations are already happening. And, I'm really looking forward to partner with them and continue to build these relationships. And at the end of the day, we got to win games, right? And, I'm excited about the opportunity.
On the subject of relationships, Carlos, I'm not sure that the fans truly appreciate what an off day in spring training means, what the grind is from mid-February until you then have 162 games left. So you drove across the state yesterday to be with your family, your wife, and your children. John and I truly appreciate you finding a few minutes to talk to us today. Thank you for doing that, and all the best.
No, thanks for having me, guys. It's always a pleasure.
John and I, of course, thank Carlos Mendoza for joining us on the show. John, hit or error this week?
I'm going to give it to the San Francisco Giants, who signed Matt Chapman. He's a terrific third baseman, won a bunch of gold gloves, even last year when he didn't have his best season overall, back with his old manager from the A's days at Bob Melvin. So great signing for the Giants, and they've had a good offseason, very good. Obviously, they've added Soler, Lee, the Korean outfielder, Murphy, Hicks. So they've done a lot. They still have room to see whether they could do more. They've said that I guess they came out and said that they don't expect to sign one of the big pitchers, but hey, they said they didn't expect to sign one of the big free agents. And then a week later turned around and signed Chapman. You never know if things fall into place. So I'm going to give the Giants my hit.
John, I'm going to be a little bit redundant or a lot redundant here. We began the show with Zack Wheeler. I'm going to give the hit to John Middleton here. Look, Philadelphia is thought of as a tough town to play in, but boy, have things changed there over the last few years. Remember, Trey Turner getting a standing ovation last year while struggling and kind of breaking out of it. The fact that Trey Turner is there and Harper and Wheeler and Nola. John Middleton is doing what I think a fan base hopes that every owner does, which is loves to own the team, doesn't worry about the bottom line every second, and goes for it as much as possible and takes care of his own, right? What was done this offseason with Nola and Wheeler, two guys who have thrown over 1,000 innings over the last 6 years. Wheeler has been there only 4, but combine it with the Mets. So these are guys who regular and postseason have given their hearts and body to the organization. And I'm sure the Phillies aren't just doing charity. I'm sure they think that those guys still have something left, but taking care of your own like that towards the top of the market, I think it says something very good about John Middleton and the Phillies, and probably, all things being equal, will be a destination place because of that when a free agent is deciding where they want to play.
Yeah, I mean, they tried hard for Yamamoto. Word is they were actually willing to offer the most and weren't able to do it. It's probably a little bit harder when you're talking about a star in Japan being lured to Philadelphia. But within our country, I think all the stars word is out that it's wonderful to play for John Middleton and the Phillies. Obviously, Rob Thompson, a terrific players manager as well. And it's just a great organization right now, and they do a terrific job. It's going to be interesting to see whether they, actually add a year or 2 years to Bryce Harper, who didn't do the opt-out, and he's got 8 years to go. And I mean, he is their biggest star. And it's, up to Middleton, but, in that case, we've never seen that before when somebody adds on to 8 years. If he does that, he is really one out there unique alone. Yeah. So we'll see if he does it. But
that would be crazy. That would be nuts. Hey, Nola was a free agent. Wheeler was going to enter his walk year. Right. As long as somebody else on the team is willing to cut their pay with 8 years left, if things go wrong, I would do that. If not, I think there's a level of irrationality that even John Middleton probably won't go to.
Well, he's a great owner. Also, either way, he's a great owner. So
yes,
I agree.
And you mentioned Rob Thompson, friend of the show. So we really like Rob, who had the same job for a long time as Carlos Mendoza, right? He was the bench coach who joined us this week. Was a terrific guest. We always have to thank our producers, Dan Shalom. I hope I got it right. I'm going to be saying it week to week now. And of course, Jake Brown. on the YouTube page, the New York Post YouTube page. You could see the show on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. You could hear the show. Please subscribe, rate, review. John, we're about midway through spring training. We're both on our travels. I think we're flip-flopping again. Are you going out to Arizona now?
Yep. Next week.
Next week, I'm going to go back to Tampa, home, and then kind of both coasts of Florida again. We'll be talking all about it if you stick with us on the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman.